The chairman of our committee is a man by the name of Malcolm Mackerras. Please come, Malcolm. Malcolm Mackerras has been a commentator on political issues for many years. Before this legislation was passed, there was a token inquiry, and I'll say that again. It was a half-day inquiry that did not allow for submissions about the reality of what was going on here to the extent it should have been. But this man set the cat amongst the pigeons and said this legislation is breathtaking in its contempt for the Australian Constitution. I wanted you to welcome to the stage Mr. Malcolm Mackerras.
Well, thank you, Peter, and I hope you can all hear me. I begin by saying I think we should all welcome Senator Bob Day to this gathering. Because in the last fortnight or so I've been telling everybody that Senator Bob Day is the only federal politician I admire. I can't think of any of the rest of them, although some of them are not quite as bad as some of the others. But anyway, I thought we should welcome him because he is the man who had the gumption to take this case to the High Court, beginning hearings tomorrow and continuing on Tuesday. And with any luck, I hope that on Thursday, this coming Thursday, the High Court will, by unanimous decision, strike down this, what they call it, Commonwealth Electoral Amendment Act 2016, strike it down in its entirety and tell the Parliament to go back and work to get a decent reform. Because this is not a decent reform. This is not a decent reform. This is an abomination. It has everything bad about it you could possibly imagine. The only thing I can think about it which might be perhaps defensible, even that thing is not defensible really because of its trickiness. The main characteristic of this Commonwealth Electoral Amendment Act 2016 is that it introduces a new Senate system, which would be the 6th Senate electoral system, and it is characterised by its dishonesty. So I could go back to 1948, but I don't think I have time. I could go back to 1974, 1975 and 1983, but unfortunately I don't have time. So therefore I'll have to go back to the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters report of May 2014. Now that report handed down in May 2014, I've been campaigning against it ever since, more or less full time, denouncing it to everybody who wants to listen to me, and I will denounce it to you. However, I should make this observation. Bad though that report was, it wasn't quite as bad as this legislation. Because this legislation actually varies that report with roughly a 10% variation. So how do you explain the variation? Well, it's quite simple really. I discovered quite quickly that the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters report did not enjoy a Senate majority. That was quite clear to me. So because that was clear to me and to all sorts of other people, including Prime Minister Tony Abbott and most of his ministers, because that was quite clear to me, the government of Tony Abbott quite rightly did nothing whatever about that report. Absolutely correct decision on Tony Abbott's part and the government he led. Right, then Malcolm Turnbull comes in. Malcolm Turnbull thinks he's smarter than Tony Abbott, so he decided this scheme would suit my purposes very nicely, thank you. It would enable me to have a double dissolution election, clean out those senators I dislike, meaning by that 6 of the 8 crossbench senators, clean them all out, get a majority in the Senate if I possibly can, or even if I can't, I can get Xenophon to have the balance of power and he will do what I want. All I need to do is have enough pork barrelling to South Australia and I can buy off Senator Xenophon and his 2 colleagues in the Senate by that fact. So Malcolm Turnbull, thinking himself to be so smart, decided to proceed with this thing. And then he discovered what Tony Abbott knew. They didn't have a Senate majority. So how do you buy a Senate majority when you don't have it? So what you do is you vary the recommendation of the Joint Standing Committee by 10% and you make the changes which enable you to get the Senate majority. And the key to this were the Nationals. The Nationals wouldn't have a bar of the first report because it would have effectively stopped them from contesting elections in Western Australia. But they were willing to support this thing because they have been given an assurance that if this thing gets up, they will have a double dissolution in Western Australia and in the whole country, which would enable the government to legislate something that could get through the Parliament with the support of the Nationals, the Liberals, the Greens and Dick Xenophon, and that is why we have the 10% variation. But now, why is the legislation actually worse than the Joint Standing Committee report? Well, the Joint Standing Committee report was bad, because it illustrated the cartel nature of the big party machines. The big party machines have constituted a cartel during the life of this Parliament. They have done everything that you expect a cartel to do, namely freeze out competition to their established status. The only thing about the big party cartel is it's actually changed, because there are three parties which have always been part of the cartel: the Liberal Party, the Greens and Xenophon. They've been permanent members of the cartel. The original cartel included the Labor Party. But very quickly the Labor Party realised what a bad thing this was. They withdrew their support, so the Liberals had to buy the Nationals into it. So the most recent cartel are the Liberals, the Nationals, the Greens and Xenophon. The original cartel was the Liberals, the Labor, the Greens and Xenophon. So the Liberals, the Greens and Xenophon are the three permanent members of this cartel, and their behaviour has been the behaviour of a cartel. So that is what explains this proposal. Now, why is the proposal so much worse than the original? The reason why is that it's so utterly dishonest. It reeks of dishonesty. Yes. I call it an abominable snowman with a disease known as dishonesty flowing through its veins. That's what it is. So I've coined a few colourful phrases. Now, Peter mentioned one of the colourful phrases. I originally said this legislation is breathtaking in its contempt for the Australian Constitution, a statement of the obvious, I might add. And now I've decided that the way to describe this thing is to say that this is the abominable snowman which has flowing through its blood the disease of dishonesty. So let me explain the dishonesty of it. Consider the advertisements that the Australian Electoral Commission are showing on television, you hear on radio and you read in the newspapers. They describe your options wrongly. Wrongly. For example, I heard on the radio this morning, the advertisement says, if you choose to vote above the line, you may vote by voting 1 to 6 in 6 boxes above the line. Now that's wrong. That's wrong. Under this legislation, you can vote from 1 to whatever the number of boxes there is above the line. If there are 12 boxes above the line, you can vote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 12. That's the position which is correctly stated by me. That's not what the advertisements say. The other advertisements say, in print, you will need to number 6 boxes. Now that's wrong. That's wrong. They know it's wrong. You do not need to number 6 boxes if this thing comes into place. You can number 1, or you can number 1 and 2. For example, while I don't know who's going to be on my ballot paper, I'll tell you now how I would vote if this thing comes in. I would put my 1 in the box beside, above the name Family First. I'd put 1 for them, and I'd put 2 for Labor. And I wouldn't mark anything more, and I would know perfectly well that that is a first preference vote for the number 1 candidate of Family First, and that if that candidate is not elected, my second vote would then go to the second Labor candidate. Now, I would know that because I know the rules. Now, these rules are not described correctly. Therefore, I maintain that the written advertisements actually contain 2 lies. There's a lie about the above-the-line vote, and there's a lie about the below-the-line vote. I've been told that I shouldn't use the word lie because it's too strong a word, but I can't see why I shouldn't use the word lie when the alternative is simply to say it's misleading. Well, it's not just misleading, it is deceitful. Now, why is the Electoral Commission deceiving people in these advertisements in print and on radio and television? Why are they deceiving people? The short answer is they've been left no option by the politicians. It's the politicians who are deceiving the people. And the Australian Electoral Commission is simply doing what the politicians tell them they must do. So that's why this new system is so incredibly dishonest. But the whole motivation of it is wrong. It's got everything wrong with it you could possibly imagine. But the original thing that made my blood boil when I first heard of this thing, I became aware that Anthony Green abuses his power given to him by the ABC, and he abuses his power and has been doing so now for quite a few years by engaging in propaganda which accompanies his election night descriptions. So in the 2013 election, the September 2013 election, Anthony Green dished out his propaganda to 3 million viewers, being the viewers given to him by the national broadcaster. He dished out his propaganda, and the effect of that propaganda was that when the politicians, led by Nick Xenophon, set up this Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters inquiry, not surprisingly, the great majority of the submissions favoured the Anthony Green view because they heard no other view. They only heard the Anthony Green view via his propaganda on election night in September 2013. That explains how the Joint Standing Committee was able to produce that report and make it sound as though it was respectable. They also rigged the thing by including only politicians, federal politicians from the Liberal Party, the Labor Party and the Greens, supported by Nick Xenophon. Only those were allowed on the committee. Now, what did these politicians do when they talked to each other? Well, they listened to all the submissions, which included me. They did actually mention my name favourably. Have I run out of time? I got a slight... Well, okay. What these politicians did was to say to themselves, without saying to the public, they said to each other, we represent the interest of the machines of our parties, which means we represent the interest of the machine of the Liberal Party, the Labor Party and the Greens. Let's proceed on that basis. So then they said, we know that under the 1984 Act there are 3 features of the ballot paper which I call the 3 contrivances of the ballot paper. They are the thick black line, which is known as the ballot dividing line, the party boxes above the line and the group voting tickets. So they went through these 3 contrivances and they said to each other, the ballot dividing line is convenient for our organisations, let's keep it. The boxes above the ballot line, they are convenient to our organisations and let's keep them. The group voting tickets, by contrast, are inconvenient to our machines. They resulted in Ricky Muir taking a seat in Victoria from Senator Helen Kroger. That is inconvenient to us, let us recommend its scrapping. So then they engaged in all the most offensive moralising you could possibly imagine in this propaganda report, which had unanimous endorsement from the members of the committee and therefore carried respectability because it was chock-a-block full of dishonest data and some honest data, describing the results in 2013 quite wrongly, but describing them in terms of Anthony Green's propaganda, supported by other propagandists who should be ashamed of themselves, academics like Kevin Bonham, George Williams and Anne Toomey, who should all be ashamed of themselves, supported this propaganda, and that's how this report was able to gain just enough measure of credibility to fool the public. So the public thinks there is some worthy motive perhaps beside this thing. There is no worthy motive at all. The thing is entirely designed to shore up the interests of the big party machines. That is entirely its purpose. It has no worthy purpose. That is its purpose, to shore up the interests of the big party machines. Now, that originally meant the Liberal Party, the Labor Party and the Greens and Xenophon. But the Labor Party had enough sense to withdraw from the conspiracy, and within 12 months of the report it was clear to me that the Labor Party would withdraw from the conspiracy. Now, unfortunately, it took them 12 months further before they made this official. And unfortunately, they had to put up with the most appalling dummy spit I've ever seen a politician to give. You may have noticed that Gary Gray engaged in the most appalling dummy spit I've ever seen from any politician, and he did it twice. Now, not surprisingly, the Labor Party doesn't have any credibility on this subject, but all I'm willing to say is that I exempt the Labor Party from the harsh criticism I give to the others, I only regret that the Labor Party ever went along with this thing, because they always knew it was a bad idea. They always knew that it wasn't going to serve their interests anyway. They always knew that its purpose was to serve the interests of Malcolm Turnbull and the Greens in the longer term. They always knew that Nick Xenophon would be the big beneficiary in the double dissolution election, which is clearly the case. And they always knew this. They should never have gone along with this thing. The truth of the matter is they chose to do filthy deals in the first place, and there was a period when the Labor Party inhabited the same sewer as the Liberal Party, the Greens and Xenophon. And unfortunately, when they decided to get out of that sewer and show a little bit of respectability, unfortunately most of the commentators thought they were behaving very cynically, which of course they were. It's just that they weren't quite as cynical as all the rest. Anyway, I think I've explained to you why this is an abomination. If anybody really wants to hear an hour and a half lecture from me, I would be only too happy to tell anybody in an hour and a half as to why this is such an abomination and tell you all about the history of it.
1, 2. Thank you, Malcolm Mackerras. Malcolm has explained to you the technical side of this. You know, it's incredibly complex to really understand exactly what's going on. Malcolm is a man of tremendous standing. He's what we call a psephologist, and he understands the science of election. The majority of us, as the little guy in the street, it's very complex to understand, and our government has taken advantage of that and wants to use the ignorance, or let me put it that way, wants to use the fact that it is complex for the common man to take advantage of the Australian people.
Tune in tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Bye for now.